All right, today we are diving into a really simple but honestly a super powerful training method that might just flip the script on how you think about your workouts. This is all about working smarter, not just grinding harder.
You know the feeling, right? You're on, say, rep 8 of a set of 10. Your form starts to get a little questionable, the bar's speed slows to a crawl, and you're just fighting gravity to hit that magic number. It happens to everyone. But what if I told you that grind, that struggle, might actually be holding you back?
And that feeling leads us right into our first big idea here, the problem with reps. That sensation of hitting a wall, it's not just you. It's built into the way traditional sets are structured. They basically force you into a battle between getting tired and keeping your reps looking good.
So let's look at this side by side. On the left, you've got your standard set of 10 reps, fatigue builds up, and the quality of those reps just tanks by the end. But on the right, you see a cluster set. We're still doing the exact same 10 reps, but we've broken it into 5 mini sets of 2 with little rests in between. Same total work, but a completely different and way higher quality experience. This brings us to a much smarter way to think about training. And you know, this isn't some brand new fitness fad. It's a proven, structured approach that's been used by elite athletes for decades.
So, what exactly is a cluster set? It's really simple. You take a standard set and you just break it down into smaller chunks or clusters. But the real magic, the secret ingredient, is that intra-set rest. That little 5 to 45-second pause inside the set that just changes everything.
Believe it or not, this idea actually came from Olympic weightlifters way back in the 1950s. They had a huge problem. They realized the last few reps of a heavy training set looked absolutely nothing like the explosive lifts they needed to do in competition. So what was their solution? They started breaking their sets into these small clusters. The result was amazing. They could handle the same amount of weight, but every single rep stayed fast, powerful, and technically perfect.
Okay, so why does this tiny little change work so incredibly well? Well, it really boils down to 3 key benefits, and they all have to do with managing fatigue. Let's break them down.
First up, and this one is going to sound a little strange, is that it just feels easier. Yeah, even though you're lifting the exact same weight for the exact same total number of reps, the whole thing feels way less stressful.
Just look at this. Research shows that for the same amount of work, a straight set might feel like an 8 out of 10 effort, a real grind. But a cluster set doing that same work, it's perceived as a 6. Those tiny little rests give your nervous system just enough of a breather to recover, which drops the overall stress of the set.
And because it feels easier, that leads us straight to benefit number 2, which is all about performance. When a lift doesn't feel like a total battle, you can maintain much higher quality. And specifically, that means higher power and speed on every single rep you do. I mean, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? In a straight set, your first rep is a rocket ship. By rep 5, it's more like an airplane. And by rep 10, you're a turtle. But in a cluster set, because of those little rests, every single rep can be a rocket ship. You're basically preventing that drop-off in speed.
And why do we care so much about that speed? Because it lets you tap into these guys, your type 2 motor units. Think of these as your superstar muscle fibers, the ones responsible for massive force and power. In a regular set, they only really show up to the party when you're close to failure. But with clusters, you're training them with maximum intent from rep 1 all the way to the end.
And finally, our third benefit, which is so important for anyone who's trying to learn a new lift or maybe even rehabbing an injury. It just makes you a better, faster learner.
Just think about it for a second. That 15-second rest, it's not just for catching your breath. It's a built-in coaching window. You do a couple of perfect reps, then you pause and you think, okay, how did that feel? Could I keep my chest up a little more? And then you immediately get to apply that feedback on the next mini set. It creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop for learning a movement.
So that's all the theory. But what does this actually look like when we put it into practice? Let's take a look at a couple of real-world examples to see how this works.
Okay, so first up, we've got an athlete dealing with some knee pain. The problem is that high rep sets, once they get tired, cause their technique to fall apart, and that just irritates the joint. The solution? We use short clusters of just 2 reps. This lets them build real power without ever getting to that point of breakdown where the pain starts.
Now, here's a totally different case. This is someone with low back pain. For them, fatigue isn't just a physical thing, it's also psychological. As soon as they start to feel tired, their brain starts screaming that the movement is dangerous. So here, clusters act as a mental reset. They keep the quality high, which helps prevent that fear and avoidance from ever kicking in.
All right, now cluster sets sound pretty incredible, and honestly they are, but they are not a magic bullet. There is one pretty significant trade-off that you absolutely need to know about.
And here it is. It's really simple. All those little intra-set rests, they add up. A workout built around cluster sets is just going to take longer than a traditional workout with the same amount of reps and weight. You are trading time for quality.
So the key here is knowing when not to use them. If you're really crunched for time, well, clusters might not be for you that day. Or if your specific goal is to improve your work capacity, your ability to just grind, then traditional straight sets are actually the better tool for that job. Ultimately, what this all comes back to is a philosophy of training smarter, not just harder. It's about knowing you have different tools in your toolbox and picking the right one for the goal you have today.
So let's just do a quick recap. The big takeaways are, first, cluster sets break big sets into smaller, high-quality mini sets. Second, they lower how hard it feels while keeping your power and speed high. Third, they create these amazing feedback loops for learning. And finally, you can adapt them for any goal, managing joint load, fatigue, or even fear.
And I want to leave you with this idea because I think it's really powerful. With cluster sets, that little pause, it isn't a break from the work. In a very real way, the rest is the work. It's the tool you are deliberately using to make sure every single rep is a great one.
So the final question really is for you. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, if you're in rehab, or if you're just looking to get better results in the gym. I want you to think about where quality matters most to you. How could structuring your sets in this smarter way totally change the way you train?